All right, it's time to look at the stories on the headlines across papers in Nigeria right now. Very interesting stories, I must say. But I have with me in the studio to join me in analyzing this, public affairs analyst Jide Ologun is here with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to see you. We also have from the University of Lagos, Dr. Dane Kere. Dr. Kere, good morning.
Good morning.
And you're welcome. All right, let's begin. The Punch newspaper is our first story here, is our first paper here, and the story headline here says, "Only an act of God can stop Saturday's election," says INEC. And stop inciting us to disobey orders, Buratai tells presidential candidates, and don't drag military into politics, PDP advises Chief of Army Staff. All right, that's on the Punch. If you move to the Guardian newspaper, fresh controversy over Buhari's shooting orders, and has multiple riders there saying Army faults Atiku's advice to disobey directive, and PDP warns Buratai, insists president's action illegal, and its bank check for genocide, say groups, why order must not be obeyed, and the Muslim group backs move against riggers. And if we move from the Guardian newspaper, let's go to the Vanguard. The Vanguard is saying unlawful orders, withdraw your statement, Army chief tells Atiku, and it has some multiple riders there on that headline saying, says PDP candidate trying to incite army against constituted authority and obey orders by be loyal 100% or resign, Buratai tells officers and soldiers. And don't politicize military, PDP warns and adds Buhari lacks powers to deploy soldiers for election. Leave politics, tackle insurgency. Atiku replies the Chief of Army Staff, and Federal Executive Council backs Buhari's order on ballot box snatchers. From the Vanguard, let's move to This Day newspaper. We can't disobey Buhari's order, Buratai tells Atiku, citing Court of Appeal judgment banning military from election duties. PDP cautions Chief of Army Staff not to drag army into politics. Well, those are the headlines this morning. But some of the very interesting stories that will get your attention, Jide, let me start with you, is this story on page 10 of the Punch saying herdsmen attack Agatu community in Benue, kill 16. We're back to Agatu again.
Yes, and that has been going on for many years. And of course, if you benchmark it with the statement of the president, some Nigerians have expressed concern that the same level of force should have been directed at the herdsmen attack. And the president said at the time that this crisis has historical background, and I quite agree with that. You know, soon as the governor of Kaduna made a statement that foreign observers who interfere in our electoral processes will return to their countries in body bags, I did a research and I discovered that there was a time also he claimed to have paid the Fulanis, that he traced them to about 14 African countries
the headsmen, actually.
Exactly, to pay them not to revenge.
Okay.
And the storyline is that they migrate because of weather situation when they are attacked. And of course,
all right. Let me fight. Dan, from on your part, there is supposed to be a military base in Agatu in Benue State, and we still have this attack. What do you think may be wrong?
Well, everything seems to be wrong. Don't forget that there have been attacks on military base by Boko Haram. So the difference between these headers and Boko Haram is a very thin line, you know. So to say what could be the issue, I think for one, we do know that in terms of, you know, equipment, they do have some, but we do know that it's not as sophisticated as it should be, because the issue of intelligence gathering is a very critical issue to security. So once you are, you know, you are not able to do that in order to preempt what is going to happen, the chances are that you will be, you know, on the other side trying to see how to, you'll be reacting.
Yeah, but we have had relative peace in Agatu for at least we've not heard of attacks in Agatu recently. What could be behind this now when we're
don't forget equally that, you know, the relative peace you had was the level of involvement of the security then. One thing I do know is that each time we have been able to subdue these elements to a point, there's usually this attitude of we have overcome, and there seem to be that mood of total relaxation.
Jide, do you think the military or the security agencies have relaxed?
I won't say that. You know, let's go back to some practical issues in this country. We have reported that ammunition got imported into the country. And some of us have been asking these questions. This ammunition that you seize from the importers, where are they? You read the report of Boko Haram invading a military base, and you start reading about missile launchers, you know, high-profile ammunition. Primarily, how do they get into our societies? Who brings them in?
Yeah, we hear of importation of army uniforms.
Army uniforms.
And boots again, and all of that had been intercepted by the customs at one time or the other.
Exactly. When they are intercepted, do we destroy them, or who takes charge of
well,
these elements?
The customs have made it have made it clear when they find these things, they hand them over to security agencies who are responsible for the investigation and all of that. So, what the outcome of the investigation is what Nigerians always wait to see.
Exactly.
Hear,
you hardly get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you look at, let's isolate the recent attack on the governor of Borno State, Shetima. ISIS claimed ownership of that attack. And that confirms the position we have admitted, that the Islamic states of West Africa is invading Nigeria.
All right.
We have also...
Sorry, Dr. Kere, because we're trying to manage time. Do you, what impact do you think this attack in Agatu will have on the elections coming up in 3 days?
As you well know, once there is a security breach, the tendency for people to come out to vote is a bit remote. So people will be afraid. You know, it could affect the outcome by way of, you know, either people not coming out, or you find a situation in which people will even leave that particular environment, and chances are that is where they registered. So where you have a displacement of people who have registered and who were expected to vote before the time of voting, then obviously you are going to have the absence of those people, you know, with respect to voting. And we don't know the number, I don't know the total population of that place. And if you have that, when you cannot tell which side the votes will go, then obviously it's going to reduce the number of votes that will be cast eventually. And you never can tell if that will be the stronghold of one person or the other. So it's going to have that particular kind of effect. It's just like it has in the, you know, with respect to the Boko Haram attack everywhere.
All right, Dr. Daniel Kere, thank you so much for coming in. Jide Ologun, thank you very much for coming.
It's always
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
God bless
Right.
Nigeria.
And we still have in the studio Dr. Dan Ekere, a lecturer from the University of Lagos, and Jide Ologun. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you.
Now let's go to the headlines or stories making the headlines this morning. We'll start with the Punch. Only an act of God can stop Saturday's election, says INEC. Stop inciting us to disobey others, Burate tells presidential candidates. Don't drag military into politics, PDP advises Chief of Army Staff. And we head to The Guardian, where fresh controversy over Buhari's shooting order. Army faults Atiku's advice to disobey directive. PDP warns, Burate insists president's action illegal. It's blank check for genocide, says groups, why order must not be obeyed. Muslim groups back move against rigors. Let's move to the Vanguard now. A major headlines here. Unlawful orders, withdraw your statement, Army Chief tells Atiku. Says PDP candidate trying to incite army against constituted authority. Obiadas be loyal 100% or resign, Burate tells officers. Soldiers, don't politicize military, PDP warns at Buhari lacks powers to deploy soldiers for election. Leave politics, tackle insurgency, Atiku replies, and the FEC backs Buhari's order on ballot box snatchers. And to this day, we can't disobey Buhari's order, Burate tells Atiku, citing Court of Appeal judgment banning military from election duties. PDP cautions Kwas not to drag army into politics. So now, interesting stories there, I must say, gentlemen, but let's move straight to The Guardian now. Let's head inside where we have a story here saying qualitative basic education will reduce out-of-school menace. Dr. Dan, as a lecturer, is that what it really is?
Well, I'm not a statistician, neither have I gone around tried to take stock of how many, you know, out-of-school children have had any benefit.
Nigeria is said to have the highest number.
Yeah, but it's the Bureau of Statistics that always give us those details. Now, whether qualitative technical education has actually done what the minister has said, I think he's in a better position to tell us that. But then, let us begin to see the effect as well, because we're talking about technical education. Now, the idea is that you would have gained some skills, you know, at that level, such that some of those things that we are, you know, over time.
When you say skills, are we really, you know, in that light? When technical education seems to be a thing of the past now.
That is the way it appears. But it is one thing that is very critical to our economy, because you cannot just talk about, you know, an economy without those services. For instance, if you are into building, you discover that people who you know, who fix tiles are even being brought from, you know, neighboring countries and the rest of it. So, and these are things that are learned. You can take some of these things at the technical, you know, at the school level.
All right, let's bring Jide in now. 13.2 million children out of school with technical education, correct that, as Dr. Dan is saying.
You know, if you look at the case of South Korea, the emphasis there is on productivity. So education must make you productive as you step out of school to add value to the economy. And if you look at China, for instance, even when Chinese travel out of the country, for example, in Nigeria, you hardly see them applying for white-collar jobs. They are into manufacturing, production, entrepreneurial ventures, you see. And I think that is when we can boost our GDP. As it stands with Nigeria today, the population rate is growing at a faster rate than the growth of the economy. And with that puts a stress on our economy. And talking about education generally, you know, some of us were worried with the statistics that about 13.2 children are out of school. But I'm not shocked by that.
Why?
Given what we have embraced as a governance value. Because when Boko Haram came out to declare in 2002, a little group then, that they were against Western education, I expressed my concern that I think we should sit back and put that statement on the table and try to identify what education represents. It represents civilization, development, light, all the good things we can talk about. But
right,
today, we can see the impact on education. And have we given the required attention to education by global standards?
We have little time, Jide, but because we need to quickly move to the Vanguard now. A story here that is attributed to Reona Kakanfo, that's Gani Adams. Don't use military to intimidate Nigerians. The polls are here. The elections is Saturday. Dr. Dan.
Sometimes, you know, the army is a different ballgame entirely. It's not like the police, you know, and I do not think that they have any training in, you know, a civil.
Constitutionally, the police are meant to handle issues like this.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And they are trained, apart from just constitutional issues, they are trained in that particular perspective. You know, training matters. The army is not actually trained for all those civil activities. So bringing them into, you know, election issues, a number of times creates a lot of casualties. But the challenge you need to look at, because the question is snatching of ballot boxes and bringing the army and all of that. I don't even think snatching of ballot boxes is any longer fashionable. It's no longer an issue. So to begin to emphasize that and, you know, talk about the army and all of that, for me, it's like we're living behind time. All
right, Jide, let's get your views on this matter.
I classify that statement under situational stress.
Really?
You know, in stress management, there is an aspect called situational stress, you know, and anxiety came up that made the president.
What is this anxiety?
With the postponement of the elections and the report of 66 killed.
Does that warrant making such statements?
Definitely. That means the electoral processes are threatened. And there were reports of intention to rig. And let's talk about it. He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He has a constitutional mandate to ensure that the minority in the populace do not constitute threats to the majority. So there must be that preservation of security. But that statement in its context has been interpreted. But let's now come to the concept of the law. If you look at Section 129 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended.
I'll have to cut you there because we
Okay.
have run out of time. Jide Ologun and Dr. Danny Kerry, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.